Hey everyone, it's Michael GoosebumpsFan, and today I want to be doing a series ranking video on the Tales to Give You Goosebumps book series. I just finished this. Well, I finished the last book, the sixth book in the series. Yeah, I've got the series done and read now, so I always do a series ranking video. I actually need to reformat my setup here, so just give me just a second so I can get everything back in order, upside down, so I can start with the worst book. And, yeah, there's 6 of these books. They're short story collections, for anybody who doesn't happen to know. They're not your typical full-page or full-book novel. They have short stories that are about 10 to 15 pages apiece. And for the most part, I've loved these books. I've thought for the most part these are some of the most unique Goosebumps books. Some of these stories are the most unique Goosebumps stories. And they have a lot of good entries in here, but they have some really bad ones. And one of the worst ones that I have read so far in a whole book collection was actually the most recent. I published the review right before this video. And I can't believe how rough this book was, especially for somebody like myself who's a big Christmas fan. The number 6 entry in this series ranking is More and More and More Tales to Give You Goosebumps, which is book number 6. Curly on a snow sled. There's a doggy down here on a regular sled. There's some snow. There's Christmas stories in here. And yet it crushed my heart. There's some decent good stories in here. The 4 good ones, or relatively mostly good ones, are the first story, Don't Sit on the Gronk. The third story, The Ice Vampire. Let's see. Towards the end, you have The Double Dip Horror, which is very good. It's a skiing story if you like skiing. Santa's Helpers is the story after that. It's kind of good. Kind of good about some kids encountering, a very angry Santa Claus and a very angry couple of elves. And the book let me down. One of my biggest complaints about this book is that when I first got this whole set of books from eBay, from one buyer for like 40 bucks, when I bought the books, I happened to glance through them just to kind of see the titles of the stories, and I saw that this was a Christmas book. I didn't know that there was going to be a Christmas book in this selection. There's not many Christmas Goosebumps books in general. It's like 3 or 4. And so I was stoked for this. I was hoping it'd be really good. One of my biggest collections that I have in my life is Nutcrackers. I've collected Nutcrackers since I was a kid. I love those things. I don't know what it is. I just adore them. I have a huge collection, 2 giant, massive totes filled with them. And it's Christmas time. So I thought the second story in this book, Nutcracker Nightmare, would be right up my alley. And it was not. It was not. It was not. Not a good book. Not a good short story. But this book overall, it had some good things in there. That's about it. I gave it a very low rating for the most part. Not a good book. Really not good. If you're collecting Goosebumps, collect it. If you're looking for books to read that are more unique in Goosebumps, you want a good book to read, don't pick this one up. Even if you're a Christmas fan like myself, don't pick it up. It's going to let you down. It's not as Christmassy as you'd think it'd be. That's one of the biggest things with Goosebumps. It shines so brightly with Halloween stuff, like the Haunted Mask 1 and 2, and even 4 for that matter, and even kind of 3. You have the Headless Halloween, which is fantastic. Attack of the Jack-O-Lanterns is amazing. Goosebumps shines its best, in my opinion, at Halloween. Some of the best, most iconic stories in all of Goosebumps is the Halloween time stuff. And yet, this particular book, being a Christmas book, is not as good as it could have been. I don't know what's up with that. It's super weird to me. But anyway, the number 5 slot in the book series, or this series ranking, is actually the 5th book, the one that came before the last book. It's called More and More Tales to Give You Goosebumps. It's book number 5. I thought it'd be more summer themed. It's not really, honestly. What are some of the good stories in here? There was The Haunted Guitar, which is pretty good. Live Bait. Live Bait messed with me because I have a fear of fish. Live Bait was horrendous. In a scary way, not in like a bad written way. It was a scary story in my opinion. Something Strange About Marcy was horrible. Matt's Lunchbox was pretty decent from what I remember. Yeah, that's pretty much it. This book had some good stories in here. I might be missing some that I'm not realizing by the titles are actually good stories, but you know, I remember mostly liking this book, for the most part. The number 4 slot in the series ranking is the second book of the series, More Tales to Give You Goosebumps. Like I said, book number 2 of the series. This one is probably in better condition than any of the books that I have from this buyer that I bought these from. What are some of the stories in here? Something Fishy was good. It's about a kid in his fishbowl and his pet fish, and he actually was able to shrink himself down to go inside of the fishbowl. I actually really like that story, even though I'm terrified of fish. It kind of brought that fear in a little bit, but not entirely. It was kind of a humorous story. The ending was great. I love the ending of that story. P.S. Don't Write Back is the second story in the entire book. It's a very good camp story about a kid getting some letters, and he thinks they might be addressed to somebody else, even though they have the same name as himself. So he finds like another campgrounds across the lake, and he goes over there, and it was kind of creepy. Dr. Horror's House of Video was in this, and I love that story. That story was so freaking good. One of my favorite Goosebumps stories, having to do with like a movie rental store type thing. I grew up with movie stars and Hollywood Video and Blockbuster, being a 90s kid myself, and so this story stuck out to me a lot about something that I really wanted to talk about a whole lot with you guys, because it was great, honestly. I feel like there was another one, like The Cat's Tail, I think was one that was pretty good, from what I remember. Spirit of the Harvest Moon. Was that a good one? Maybe? Let's see. I don't know. Anyway, mostly good. I think most of these books are good. Most of the portions of these books, most of the stories within them are good, I would say. Those last two books are really the ones that didn't have a whole lot of good stories inside of them. Now, the number 3 slot, is actually the third book of the series. It's called Even More Tales to Give You Goosebumps. There is Curly himself inside of a pool, a little kiddie pool with a dog, like usual. He has the buzz cut going on. I thought this was a really good book. From this point on, they were great. This book collects so many good ones, like Don't Wake Mummy, one of my favorite TV episodes from the TV show back in the 90s. But also a fantastic short story. Both were great. There's another great story in here called The Haunted House Game. That's really good, and it's a good TV episode as well. The Perfect School, I didn't really like the story, and I didn't really like the TV episodes all that much. So, they were kind of okay. I think Home Sweet Home was one that I liked, I believe. I think I'm Telling was also one that I liked. I can't remember all the stories off the top of my head, but there were some really, really good ones in here for the most part. And like I said, I have individual reviews for every single one of these books, and I talk about each of the stories relatively in depth, not spoiler-fied. Spoiler-fied, listen to me. I panicked because my book was sliding off my leg, and I said spoiler-fied. I don't really do a whole lot of spoiler reviews in general. I don't really do any on my channel because I try to stay away from everything I possibly can, not to ruin it for you guys, so you guys can go into things experiencing them for the first time if you get your hands on these books. But I've done individual reviews and individual reviews within those reviews for the stories themselves in these books. So in case you want to check those videos out, I have them on a playlist called Tales to Give You Goosebumps videos. Just thought I'd let you know that in case. My number 2 spot in this ranking series is the first book, Tales to Give You Goosebumps. I love this cover. I love this picture of Curly back in the day when he was like a ghost-looking thing. I think this is the best-looking Curly that's ever existed. I think it's one of the best covers Goosebumps has ever made. I love the color scheme with the orange and the yellow. It just looks so 90s. So 1990s, man. Let's talk about some of the stories in here, man. Some of the best stories are in this book. The House of No Return is great. It's a club of kids that are daring kids and actually locking kids inside of a haunted house type thing that may or may not be haunted. But it was great. I love the twist at the end of the book. Strained Peas. You know, a young kid, he gets a new sister, right? A new baby sister is born. Parents bring her home and the baby's crazy and mean and evil. It's great. How I Won My Bat was really good. It's about a kid who plays baseball. Really like that story. One of my favorites in the entire book is actually called Mr. Teddy. I thought that was a fantastic story. It had such a good message to it. I'll never forget that story as long as I live. That was a great story about materialism, and it applied so much to myself. It was just great. I really liked it. Another story in here that I liked a whole lot was Click, about a kid finding a remote, and it was great. Really, really great. Anyway, that is the number 2 pick. And the number 1 pick, as you can probably tell for anybody who knows these books, knows that it's going to be book number 4, Still More Tales to Give You Goosebumps, which is a Halloween short story collection. Pretty much every story in here I loved. I thought it was a great, great book. It had so much going for it. Probably the most incredible of the Goosebumps Halloween books. I put it in my top 5 like Halloween Goosebumps books video I did. It was at the bottom of the list, but it was still up there. It was still a great book. One of the best Goosebumps books, one of the most unique Goosebumps books I've ever read in my life, whether it be a short story collection, whether it be a Halloween book or anything like that. It just had so much going for it. It's just a great collection of stories. Let's talk about some of these stories. First story in here is called Pumpkin Juice, about kids learning to make something called pumpkin juice. Does some crazy stuff to them. It was a really great way to start off this book. Attack of the Tattoo. There were basically kids getting tattoos. Like you remember when we were kids in the 90s, you'd get tattoos when you were a kid. There'd be like a piece of paper inside of like a book, like an activity book or anything, like Spider-Man or something. And you'd cut out the paper and have like a little plastic piece on it. And you'd have to put it on your arm and put a wash rag on it, and it would like bond to your arm, and then you'd peel it off and you'd have the picture of like Spider-Man or Star Wars or anything like that on there. I used to have them all the time when I was a kid because I loved that. I don't think kids even do that anymore. It was such a 90s thing. That's why this book was so great to me in so many ways, because of things like that. It's such a 1990s thing. An old story is very good about some kids eating prunes. It starts turning them into old men. You have The Scarecrow. That was very good, about a scarecrow that shows up on somebody's yard. And it's dressed and it has different things in its hands, and it was kind of cool. Awesome Ants. Really good episode, really good short story. Really loved both. What's another good one? The Goblin's Glare. The Goblin's Glare was a really good one. Basically a kid that draws a whole lot actually drew a picture of a goblin to put on the front door of his house. And it's kind of scary. And the mom thinks the eyes, particularly, are very scary. And I love the way the story played out. I thought it was really good. The Space Suit Snatcher, which is the last story in the entire book, I thought was a little weird. Kid finds like a spacesuit at a garage sale type thing, the yard sale, and he starts communicating with like aliens and stuff. It wasn't really all that great, but it was kind of, I don't know, it was okay. But this is the #1 pick without doubt. This is the best, in my opinion, of the Tales to Give You Goosebumps stories. Now, like I said, this series, it's very good. Very, very good for the most part. The last two books were a little lacking, I think, and kind of the second book a little bit too, from what I remember off the top of my head. I didn't go back and rewatch my videos or anything like that, but from what I remember, memory-wise, I think the most memorable are easily the fourth book and the first original book from the series. The rest of the books have good moments in them. Sometimes, towards the end, towards the last two books of the series, there were sometimes, every once in a while, a good story, but most of the other books are really, really good. Out of the 6 books, I hope you liked the video. I hope you'll check out the series if you like to collect, or if you like to read in general, you like Goosebumps in general. It's a good series if you like to read. It's a good series if you like Goosebumps. It's a good series if you like R.L. Stine. It's a good series if you like Halloween and Christmas, and then summertime stuff, because one of the books is focused a lot on summer. It was actually the third book with Curly in the pool. But there's a lot to say about these books. They're very interesting, very different from any other Goosebumps things that have ever existed. I don't think we've had a short story collection from Goosebumps in probably since that last book from like 1997 or 99, somewhere in there. I think the closest we came in recent years was the triple header books. They had like 2 or 3 stories in one big book, from what I understand. I haven't read those before, but I think that's what I heard they are. But other than that, I don't think we've had a short story collection in a long time from Goosebumps. It might be something to bring back. I don't know, with Slappy World going on right now. It might not make as much money, but, you know, we collectors would go after it easily. Anyway, what are your thoughts on the Tales to Give You Goosebumps book series and my ranking in general? What did you think about my video? What do you think about the different stories I mentioned here? What's your favorite of all of the stories that are collected in all of these books? If you have 6 of these books and you have 10 stories per book, that's about 60 stories. What's your favorite story out of those 60 stories in total? If I had to say one for myself, if I had to pick one for myself, it might very well be that's a hard one, man. It might very well be in the first book. It might be, well, was it in the first book? Well, you know what? It might be Mr. Teddy from the first book, the one I talked about with the teddy bear. Might very well be my favorite one from the first book. But anyway, what are your thoughts? Put them down below, guys. Thank you for watching. May the Lord Jesus Christ bless you guys today, and goodbye.